Hi, my name's Kim J and I'm a visually impaired chef. I'm also a volunteer for RNIB. Now today I'm going to show you how to make various types of naan bread. Now if you mention naan bread in my family, there's always a massive row. Who has the best recipe? Do you use plain flour or bread flour? Do you use yogurt or ghee? Do you use yeast? Well, today I'm going to show you my recipe. The ingredients you're going to need for the naan bread is 7 grams of dried yeast, 2 tablespoons of Greek yogurt, 2 tablespoons of sugar, salt, 500 grams of bread flour, and you're also going to need to make the different types of naans. I've got here about 2 tablespoons of black mustard seeds. You can use black onion seeds if you want. 125 grams of butter. 250 grams of mature cheddar. A couple of large handfuls of chopped coriander. Approximately 6 green chilies. And approximately 4 cloves of garlic. And these are the ingredients for naan. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make some garlic butter. Now you can make this a couple of days in advance. With the butter it needs to be soft. Now this butter is quite hard, so I'm just going to stick it in the microwave. And yes, my microwave talks like most of my equipment does. I'm taking the butter out and it has softened. Doesn't matter if the butter's melted. And I've got a small food processor here. You can use a larger food processor or a soup blitzer if you want. And if you have none of those equipment, that's no problem. Just melt your butter and chop your garlic up into fine pieces and mash them together for at least 5 minutes until the whole of the mixture is combined. Now I've got the butter in my little mini food processor. I'm now going to stick the garlic in. Now the great thing about this garlic butter is if I have any left, I stick it in the freezer. Never waste anything. And you put it in the freezer, and whenever I need garlic butter, just pull it out and I've got it at hand. I've blitzed the garlic and the butter together and I'm going to set it aside. Now I want it at room temperature, so if you've made this in advance, pull it out before you go on to the next bit, which is the making of the dough. I have a bowl here which I've put the yeast into, and I've got that 2 tablespoons of sugar. I'm going to mix the sugar and the yeast together, and with some hot water I'm going to mix the two together. Now this helps to activate the yeast. Now with dried yeast, it isn't necessary to do this bit, but I'm old school. I like to sort of make the most of the ingredients I've got and make it work faster and better. And I always find just activating that yeast a little bit sooner helps. We're now about to make the basic dough mixture. I've got the flour in a large mixing bowl. I have my yeast, my Greek yogurt, the garlic butter that I've made, a jug of hot water and some salt, and I'm going to incorporate all of this together. So firstly I'm going to put in the yeast mixture. Now I'm going to add in the Greek yogurt. Now the yogurt brings a certain tang to a naan. And into that I'm only going to put a tablespoon of garlic butter. Now if you're not fond of garlic butter, you can replace it with a tablespoon of ordinary oil. All of that goes into this mixing bowl. I'm now going to put in about 1.5 teaspoons of salt. And with the hot water, I'm now going to turn it into a dough. So you add a little bit of water and you keep adding and adding until the flour comes together. I've incorporated the water into the flour. I've used approximately 150 mils of water. Now, the amount of water you use depends on the flour that you use, on the atmosphere at the time you're cooking, so it will change. Now, I've got a pastry board and some plain flour. I'm just going to put some plain flour on the board and I'm going to pull out this dough. Now, the dough, unlike when you do bread dough, initially it's quite sticky. So it's loose and it's sticky. But you start to knead. And as you knead, the stickiness goes. Now try not to use too much flour to sort of work with. But as you go along, you'll find that you'll need less and less flour. And the dough starts to become smoother. Now you will be kneading for about 10 minutes, approximately. Now already I can smell the yeast in this, but unlike when I make bread, I can also smell the tanginess of that Greek yogurt, and it's already to my nostrils smelling like naan. Now I have a neurological condition, so I have a problem with kneading, and I'm lucky enough to have a food mixer, so I'm going to do the rest of this kneading in my food mixer. And you want to knead until the dough is nice and smooth on the outside. I've been kneading this dough for about sort of 10 minutes, a little bit less if you do it in a machine. Again, on a floured surface bowl, I'm just going to tip out this dough. Now you'll find that it's a lot less sticky, but if it's still very sticky, don't be afraid to keep adding just that little bit more flour, but only little amounts. And it is now beautifully kneaded. It is smooth, and as I'm kneading, I can feel pockets of air just under the dough. It's almost squelching. It's a lovely feeling. I've kneaded the dough until it has this lovely smooth exterior. Now I've got a large piece of cling film here which I've cut big enough to cover the size of my bowl. I've got a little bit of oil and a pastry brush. Now I'm going to drop some droplets of oil onto the cling film and just brush it across the cling film. And this will help stop the dough from sticking to the top. Now I've done that, I'm going to put the dough into a clean mixing bowl. Now I always use a metal mixing bowl for proving it, and the reason is because it's a great inductor of heat. So put the dough in there and then put the cling film on top, making sure it is tightly covered. Now I've covered it and I'm going to let it prove in a warm area, and I will come back in 60 minutes to take a look at it. I've left the dough to rise. I checked on it at 60 minutes and it hadn't quite doubled its size. So I've given it another extra 20 minutes and it's doubled in size and it's now ready for the next bit, which is knead it again. Now you don't need to knead it as long as you did last time, about 5 minutes. I always love this bit because when you get that dough out of the bowl, it's sticky and it's so full of air. It's just, the texture of the dough is fabulous. And now I'm just going to knead for a further 5 minutes and just incorporate more air into that dough and stretch that gluten even further. I've been kneading this dough for 5 minutes and it's now ready for the fun bit. I've got my garlic butter and I'm going to show you the different variations of naans that you can do. You can be as creative as you want. I've got the garlic butter and I've melted it in the microwave until it's nice and liquidy. Now you take a little bit of that dough, about the size of a small orange. You don't have to be too exact about it. and just roll it into a lovely little ball in the palm of your hand. And I have a pastry board here and some flour and a rolling pin. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get that dough ball and I'm just going to roll it out into a nice circular shape. Now this one is going to be garlic naan, just plain simple garlic naan. Right, now I've rolled this bit of dough out so it's a sort of circular shape, about the size of a small dinner plate. And I'm going to brush that garlic butter on top. Just leave about a centimetre's edge at the side and just paint that one side of your circle with the garlic butter. Now, gathering the sides together, just pull all the sides together and you turn it back into a ball and just gently mould it in your hand and put it to one side, ready to be rolled and cooked. I've just took another orange sized dough ball and rolled it out to the size of a small dinner plate. Now I'm going to brush that garlic back on again. Now this time I have with me the coriander, the cheese and the green chilies. Now it's up to you how much you want. Don't overfill. That's my one tip. Don't overfill. Now what I'm doing is I'm sprinkling about a tablespoon and a half worth of the cheddar onto it. I'm going to put a sprinkle of coriander. Oh my gosh, I can already smell that. It is gorgeous. And then into that, I'm going to put green chilies. You don't need to put green chilies, and the amount is up to you. I like it hot. And again, like the garlic naan, you take the sides, you bring them together, so you're basically creating a pocket in the centre, and then you're rolling it back up very carefully and very gently, because now it's got heavy mixture in it, and just very gently roll it in the palm of your hand until it's a ball. For my last version of naan, I've got another dough ball, again size of a small orange, and into it I'm going to put a teaspoon of those mustard seeds. Like I said, you can use poppy seeds or onion seeds, totally up to you. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put it into the dough and then just knead the dough so that those seeds spread all the way through that little dough ball. And you have not only the flavour of the seeds, but for those who have sight, the flecks of black that is so indicative of a lot of naans. And now again, I'm going to roll it out to the size of a small dinner plate. I'm now going to take one of those dough balls and I'm going to roll it into a naan shape. So on a floured surface, just very gently roll it. Remember, you've got ingredients in the centre of that dough, so just be very gentle with it. A little bit of pressure is all it needs to just let it expand. Now normally, naans that you get in the shops are teardrop shapes. So if you can, try and see if you can roll it into a teardrop shape. If you can't, don't worry. A circle is fine. I've been doing this for years and I never can get it right. So just roll it up until it's approximately half a centimetre thick. Now at this stage, what I do is I very gently, I just stretch it so it almost shapes the naan into the shape that I want it to be, which is a teardrop shape. Just very gently stretch it and then we cook it. On the hob, I've got the frying pan and I've got it on a medium heat, and I'm going to place that naan bread onto the frying pan and cook it on one side for about 30 seconds. Once it's cooked, I'm going to flip it over to the other side. I've just flipped the naan, and when I scrape my fish slice on the top, I can hear, it's almost like a crackling sound. That way I know that that side is cooked. Now at this stage there's one or two things that you can do. If you don't want the naans now, you can just put it to one side and leave it until it's ready, or you could sort of pack them into freezer bags and freeze them, and they do freeze really well. But if you're going to cook them fresh, you want to cook them for a little bit longer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to toss this naan again, and with a little bit of the garlic butter, I'm just going to brush it on top. Now for those of you who are health conscious and don't want to do that, it's fine. You can use oil if you want. And already I can feel that naan popping up. All that yeast and the yogurt is doing the trick, and it smells gorgeous. It for at least 20 seconds on both sides. For those that you have sight and colour, you'll find that there are sort of brown patches on top where it's crisped up. For those of you that haven't, you can tell by the feel of it, it feels crunchy at the top. And that's it. That is naan bread. Here are all the naans I've done. The one that I cooked fully, and the rest to be either cooked and eaten later on in the evening, or to be put in the freezer. I've had a thoroughly enjoyable afternoon doing this. I'm covered in flour, but oh gosh, it feels wonderful to be so productive. Now, I know some of you that are visually impaired are worried about cooking these naans on the hob on a frying pan. Don't worry, if you don't feel confident, put the uncooked naan onto a baking parchment into the oven for 4 or 5 minutes. Just lightly brush the top with the garlic butter, and it does exactly the same. There we go, Kim's naans, perfect. Now you have a recipe for a great dish. But when you're in the kitchen, there are certain safety guides and rules that you should adhere to, and which keeps you safe. Now, one of the things that I do before I start cooking is I make sure that I've got shoes on that are sturdy with good grips. I make sure that there's nothing on the floor that I can trip over, and there are no spillages or liquid or condensation on the floor that makes it a bit of a hazard. Now, before cooking, the first thing that you do, as we all know, is wash our hands thoroughly. And especially when you're dealing with raw meat at every stage, wash your hands thoroughly. It stops cross-contamination. It keeps you and your family safe. When you're using the oven and the hob, know your oven and hob really well. Now, I use tactile markings so that I know exactly what temperature to put the oven on and what setting, so that I've not put the grill on when I should be putting the oven on. Now, with the hob, whenever you're sort of putting anything on the hob, make sure the handle is not sticking out. Now, I like to keep the handle at approximately 10 to 12. And the reason for that is it's not near enough to the unit for you to accidentally knock it off. It is not over another hob which may be on, so the handle's getting hot. So this is the safest position. Now, if you're boiling anything, be very, very careful. Don't fill the pan up too much. And if possible, use the boiler alert, which tells you when that liquid is bubbling away and it's hot, and it keeps you safe. If you're not comfortable with the hob and the oven, use the microwave whenever you can. It's a lot safer. And every time you are taking things out of the oven or from the microwave, because remember, plates and dishes get extremely hot in the microwave, use oven gloves. Now, I like to use thermal oven gloves. They're a lot safer. Don't be tempted to use tea towels or anything else. And they literally go to extreme temperatures, so you're very safe with them. Whenever you cut any food in the kitchen, use safe cutting methods. Keep the blade away from your fingers, so set it a couple of millimeters away from your fingers, and that way you're safe all the time. Now, if you're not confident with a knife, you can use appliances like food processors. Make sure you know how they work properly, and keep safe. And if you're still not confident, ask somebody else to do it. It is better to be safe than have an injury. If you have any cuts or you cut yourself whilst you're in the kitchen, put a plaster on it. And if you have a burn, run it under cold water. And if it's bad, you seek medical advice straight away. Whenever you cook meat, always ensure that the meat is thoroughly cooked, because you know, raw meat will give you food poisoning. Now, the best optimum temperature to cook meat is between 66 degrees and 73 degrees. Use a food thermometer if you're not too sure. They do have talking food thermometers, which you can get quite easily. And you store the meat as soon as you can. As soon as it's cooled down, store it straight away in the fridge and read the advice on storage on the labels.